the nervous system. It governs our physical health, our physiology. It governs our feelings, our emotions. Most people are living with chronic stress, and most of us are struggling with a balanced nervous system. We have a difficult time thinking really big or thinking big enough. So when we set goals, we go just a little bit outside the comfort zone. After childhood, we don't encourage using the imagination, but our imagination is tied to our creative centers. It's tied to our spirituality. It's tied to our intuition, and we cut that off. Think about what it is that your heart desires and why, the reasons why you want to know those things. And that is how you can get into your truest self-expression. The more we avoid, resist, suppress, that is the worst thing we can do. People believe that's their coping skill. We're traumatizing ourselves over and over again. What if feelings were just meant to be felt? What if it was just meant to be felt and you let it go?
This feels like an extra special of Raj this week, because part of the reason I even wanted to do this show was to introduce you to some of my favorite people, and people who are not just fun and kind and nice to talk to, but who have really changed my life. And there's many ways that people can change our lives. And the minute that I met our next guest, I just adored her and didn't even realize that she was the founder and creator of my all-time favorite place in all of Los Angeles, which is pretty phenomenal because there are so many incredible places in the city of LA. So I want to bring in Dr. Miranda Boe. She is the founder of The Breathing Room, an incredible meditation space in LA. It's in Westwood near UCLA. Miranda, thank you so much for joining me. I know you've had the longest day, but I appreciate you being here.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me. And yes, I am thrilled to be here, and it is mutual, and likewise, I am a huge fan of yours.
So what you have really helped me with, and I hope everybody has someone like this in their life. I think sometimes we think that someone is a good friend or they're a good business or romantic partner, but something feels off, or, we might have some resentment or think this person never listens to me, or I don't feel seen in their presence, but they love me. So I guess it's a good relationship and it's healthy. And even from our very first conversation, the way that you were able to hold space for me and my emotions, and which can be all over the place. And you met me, gosh, I was just getting over being really sick with COVID, getting it in Australia, and going through a whole host of other things. I had just moved, and my life was really a little chaotic at the time emotionally. And you were just able to create such a safe space for me to just open up and feel so loved and cared for in your presence. And that is such a gift. Besides the fact that you are a psychologist and you have professional training, how are you able to just be that, not just for me, but for everyone who meets you?
Well, thank you for saying that. And I think there's obviously the part of being a psychologist that comes in handy. So I have some of those skills in knowing how to listen and knowing how to try to understand and help people feel safe and supported. That in and of itself is something that if we can be there for other people and just trying the best that we can to look through someone's perspective, through their point of view, it can help with that connection in such deep ways. I think it can be really hard to just listen and to take the time to really listen and not be thinking of our own agenda or what we want to say next or how we're going to respond, but like you said, to just hold the space. And so I think that is something that we can all do and not have to complicate it more than that or feel that you have to have an additional level of skills, but what it means to just show up for somebody and to just hold space for them. Because truth be told, you were the one doing the work. You were the one that was being vulnerable and having the trust and sharing, some of your experiences and being receptive to the conversation. So it really is. I like how you kind of capture that of just being able to hold space, and that we can all do that for the people that we love and care about.
Yeah, and just no judgment. Again, it sometimes is a practice or it is a skill. It shouldn't be, and it should be the rule, not the exception.
Yeah.
And it was just this magical moment that I hadn't experienced in a while of just not feeling any judgment, not even like, oh, look at her shoes. Even if it was a judgment, like those are cute shoes, but you can feel someone looking at you rather than listening to you and taking in
Mhm.
what you're saying, especially when it's heavy emotions. And I think it's so rare we feel that, because at least if you're someone like me, I have really tended, especially in the past, to judge myself. So then it
Mhm.
almost feels foreign to be in the presence of somebody who is just even just meeting you, and you're good enough as you are, and you're worth listening to and talking with just as you are. I think that's such a good reminder. Did you have a model for that growing up? Or again, because it is seems like one of your superpowers. And I'd love for you to shed some light on how we can lean a little bit more into that, especially with our partners or parents or sometimes children who, oh, we just sometimes really want to judge them.
Right, right. As you know, the breathing room is a lot of it is around meditation, but the idea of mindfulness and things when you're learning about meditation or you're incorporating some of these practices in your life, one of the things that we work on is to kind of refrain from any judgment. So it starts with that self judgment. And what does that mean? To not judge ourselves or judge our thoughts, but to sit back and be an observer. And so I feel like it's part of my personal practice in my own meditation, and it's something I have to work on with myself too, of what it means to observe my own thoughts, observe my own behaviors, observe my own feelings, and to look at my experience without judgment. So I think sometimes that just becomes a practice when you're into this world or you're into these sort of things. You are honing into that a little bit different. I think another piece of it is this idea of acceptance. And so acceptance can feel really scary for a lot of people because they feel like if I'm accepting something, then I'm just sort of laying down and not like fighting for what I need to, or out chasing or grinding or whatever that may mean to different people when they hear what does acceptance mean. And so when you're in that practice too of kind of like healing or getting in touch with your best self, that acceptance piece means like I accept my imperfections. I accept the things I cannot control. I accept, and the list goes on and on and on. So it becomes a practice over time. And when I think about where did I learn these things, I don't know that I had a model per se, but I think it was on my journey of finding my own peace and what I needed to do for myself and what that looked like. And then if I can do that with other people, then I feel like, you know what, if this is something that's worked for me and this feels nourishing to me and this feels right to me, then I'm, in a sense, kind of healing myself, and then I'm available for other people in that capacity.
Thank you for that. That was so beautiful. Even just talking to you is, nobody knows, but it's a bit late here, and we both been working all day. But just even being in your presence online, I feel so energized, and it's such a testament to your energy. And I think that's why your business is so extraordinary. You really are the breathing room in terms of the energy and the space and the vibe that it creates. And so, you're going along in your life. You're a successful doctor, working with children, have your own private practice as a psychologist, successful enough, doing great. What is it that made you say, okay, there's more for me? And then you think you get the maybe intuitive hit. I'd love for you to tell us, I'm going to start this business, which is so much work, as you know, and taking a big risk. What was that journey like to first have the idea and then to see it through and have every detail so beautiful and create such a luxurious, just, I mean, my favorite place. I can't go there enough. I feel like I live there, the little breathing room mascot, but to create something so powerful for the whole community too. What was that like?
Yeah, it kind of came through two different paths that found themselves. So one of them is just having the background in mental health and recognizing that we are so under-resourced when it comes to mental health and responding to everyone's needs. So when you're looking at what the statistics tells us today about mental health and what people are struggling with and dealing with it, we do not have the resources. And then when we think about the resources available, we kind of think about it's professional help. So it is seeing a psychologist, seeing a therapist, or it is medication. And that involves seeing a professional as well. You're needing to connect with your doctor or psychiatrist. And both of those steps can feel for some people like huge steps. And then some people take that step because that's what they need and the path that they need to go on. And it can be really defeating too, because you're calling and you're like, I'm ready. I need a psychologist. I need a therapist. I need to talk to my doctor. And then you're on a 6-month waiting list. I've had 9 months waiting lists for clients, and that feels really uncomfortable where you get that call and a family reaching out to you because they feel very desperate and they are at that point where, hey, we need the help. And how quickly can we get this? And then what they're hearing on the other end is you can get on my waiting list and we can schedule you in 9 months. So when you're looking at that, and I can tell you personally too, a little bit of the burnout that I would get because I wasn't clear on my own boundaries. I would feel bad and say, gosh, I hate doing this. I'll try to squeeze you in. And then that just made my life much more unbalanced because I wasn't taking the time for me and for me to kind of decompress and for me to care for myself the way that I needed to. So one of the practices that I know that I've responded to, and when you think about sort of mental health supports, I am so equipped. I have so many resources because so many of my friends and colleagues are professional mental health providers. So I have all the support around me that I could use, that I need. I have taught coping skills. I know everything there is to know about coping skills, why they work, why we should be doing them. So I know all these things, and I know the research behind meditation and how powerful it is. And out of everything, I know that I am my best self when I am consistent with my meditation practice. So I know for me, I needed to figure out a way and a schedule and a time that I could do these things that I needed and go on my method, my way of meditation, and be able to practice that. And so I would find I just want to stay in this space. I want to stay in this internal space that I'm in. And how can I live my life that I am more in this place versus I'm in my meditation and then I quickly need to switch gears and I get right back to work and productivity and agenda and the world. And so that was something that I kind of struggled with, is I wanted to escape from my life a little bit and be like, I just want to be in this peaceful place that I can get to when I'm consistent with my practice. So just kind of looking at the needs and what I think like this works for me out of everything I know. How can we help other people to maybe this is going to work for other people? And the research says it is going to work for other people. So how can we do that and make it more accessible and come up with ways to help people understand this value? So the idea of we need some idea of additional resources and we need to campaign behind some of these methods that we know work. And what does that look like? I had no idea. And then kind of through my own meditation, I am a big, and you guys know, anyone that comes in, I'm always write down your thoughts, ideas, visions, anything that comes up. What are any insights? Just write them down. And I would do that and I would see little pieces, or I'd have a glimmer of an idea. It didn't make sense at all, but I would write it down. And through time and through my notes, I had this laid out. The whole concept of the breathing room came to me through my own meditations. So it was something that it's kind of that idea of like, you see a glimpse of a picture and then you get a little bit more. And it's like, oh, I see what this is a picture of, or I see a little bit of this. And then before I knew it, the entire path and the entire vision was laid out for me. So it wasn't something that I thought like I need to come up with this brilliant idea. I wasn't necessarily planning on that. And here we are. And so then just the journey of what do you do and how do you move into that next step and take that leap, right? I'm creating something that, like, what do I know about running a business? And this doesn't really exist. So I don't know how well this is going to do or if makes sense. There's all those things that get in the way. And so then that's where the journey and sort of some of that work about fears and about limitations and being authentic to really take the time to ask myself what I really wanted, what I really needed, judgment all aside. If I could design this life exactly the way that I want it, what would it look like? What would it feel like? What would my day-to-day activities be? And when you get really granular like that and you take the time to connect with yourself in that way, it becomes clear. And then you just, I just kind of been going and I learn something new every day. And there's days where I'm like, wow, I started this knowing absolutely nothing. And I feel like, wow, I've learned a lot. And then next week, I'm going to say, gosh, you still know nothing. And
That's
you still have
true.
so much to learn. So it's a journey, but it's also something where it's really about I've committed and I've given sort of like this devotion to that. This is my priority, and I'm trusting the process, and I'm feeling like every day it's feeling like the right thing. It's feeling true to my heart. So I refer to it as being very heart centered. The mind part, the business part, like all of those things are coming, but I'm following what feels heart centered to me and not overthinking it and not, kind of leaning into some of the negative emotions that I don't need to.
Oh, I'm getting a little emotional. Big shocker there. But so many things came to mind when you were speaking so beautifully. And something that hit me really powerfully was that you had this vision and wrote it down, and it started small and then grew and grew and grew. And you followed the steps and you did it even maybe on days where it felt hard or the cards were stacked against you or it didn't make sense or people didn't understand why you were doing it. Or you think, what if this doesn't work out, or what if this, all the things that I think we think about when we're, on the precipice of something really great, stepping into our greatness and taking a big risk. And it's just so incredible because you were willing. And again, a spiritual principle that says our good intentions are not enough. Our willingness is everything. It makes me emotional.
Mm.
And you were willing to even have the vision. You were, we're all crazy enough to dream big. So if you're not doing that, like maybe start a bit more. And if you don't feel crazy, if it doesn't scare you, your dream just truly isn't big enough. We hear that all the time, but it is so true. And I just sit here and think, wow, because you taking action on your dream, it is at the breathing room, your space, your baby, your creation, where I was getting the nudge and came up with not just the concept of doing the show, but what the show would be called. What's the tagline? What's the write up? What's the podcast description? What do I want to talk about? Who do I want to have on my show? It all came about by consistently showing up at the breathing room and putting in the work and doing the incredible treatments there that we'll talk about. And then I just think, because I've had a lot of resistance starting this show and doing this, and we won't get into all those reasons maybe later, but I just think, gosh, the person who, even if it's just one person, listens to Rawish and takes action on their dream, and then they do something that people find so inspiring that changes their life, and just the ripple effect that it creates when you decide, I'm going to do this.
Yeah. Yeah. And oh gosh, I love that you said that and the way that you framed it about like the sky's the limit. And I definitely want to like underline that because it is something that we are just as humans and people, we have a difficult time thinking really big or thinking big enough. And I know you've heard me talk about this, like our neural default networks, and there's the ways that the brain kind of operates. And we have a tendency to think right outside our comfort zone. So when we set goals, when we think that we're thinking big, we go just a little bit outside the comfort zone. So the challenge would be, or what we would want to encourage people to think about is thinking big, thinking sky is the limit, and really doing that and thinking top down, because we usually just go what we think we can do, right? Like I think I may be strong enough to do this, and it's right outside the comfort zone. versus like there's no limits, and let's think that way. And one of the things that can be really helpful in thinking big is, after childhood, we don't encourage using the imagination, because it's this idea of like, why stay in reality, and it's the society the way that we are. But our imagination is tied to our creative centers, it's tied to our spirituality, it's tied to our intuition, and we cut that off. So we are not encouraged to imagine your life the way that you want it, and imagine if you could have everything that you want, and what would it look like, but to do it with a very authentic way. And that's where you want to spend the time to get to know yourself, because in our mind, something might come up. Well, I would imagine that I had, 16 houses and I would have all the money, but really think about it, and think about what it is that your heart desires and why, the reasons why you want to know those things. And that is how you can get into your truest like self-expression, and you're the most authentic you, and on your right path too. So I love how you said we don't ever think big enough. And I concur and think that that's, we want to stay in our comfort zone. So we are not encouraged to go well beyond that, but we'll go right outside our comfort zone. And that's where most people make a lot of their decisions or make a lot of their pivots and transitions. So allow yourself to imagine.
I imagine. And then I'm finding now I'm wanting to keep stuff that's really, really important to me closer to my chest and only share with a few trusted companions like yourself. And you're so supportive. And in my mind, and I want to ask you what my mind's doing there too, when my mind's like, oh, you're not further enough along, you're not doing enough, and all of that stuff. And then you'll say that I'll just share an update and you'll say, oh my gosh, you've done so much. And it's so funny because you've done so much. And all I think is, I'm not doing enough. It's not good enough. I'm not further along. And your perspective is, you've done so much. So what is happening where I don't even feel safe sharing with people? I think maybe because some people you share, you're going to do a show and it's like, oh, so many people are already doing that. It's such a crowded space. Can you make money from like all of those things? And then I find myself sometimes ruminating on it, but I've gotten much better because I've done so many practices at the breathing room and on my own where I know intuitively not to share with that person, or I know intuitively that whatever they have to say about it doesn't pertain to me, or it doesn't have to be my truth. What is happening there when I'm asking you kind of a few questions at once? So whatever you want to take, but in terms of why I don't even feel safe sharing with so many people anymore. So what is going on with all of this?
It's hard to know exactly, but I think one of the things is kind of going back to that conversation around acceptance and where you are on your process of you're feeling good about what you are creating and the direction that you're going. And that is what you're devoting yourself to. And so that requires a lot of protection. That is something that is sacred, right? So bringing that out into a place where it feels like it could be threatened, it can be criticized, like all those things feels uncomfortable. And so I can understand where you're coming from of like, no, I'm not sure I want to share because I think it's going to be met with some criticism or some challenge or whatever it might be met with. And so you're choosing, you know what, I'm going to be protective of myself and what I'm doing, and I'm going to choose not to share. I think that could certainly be one situation that's happening. And I think as you're also transforming, maybe the people you're growing right into a new version, a new direction of yourself, and what the new you is with how you've changed in a matter of months. And so sometimes we outgrow the people that maybe would have been supportive when you were on this different trajectory or when you were on your different path. And so now the growing is going in different ways. So you may feel like I'm shifting from some of these people in some ways that maybe won't support my new journey. They were supportive of what I was doing in the past, but if that's not where I am, I don't have to stay to please them or to massage what I'm doing to try to fit to make it work for what their expectations and standards could be. So that could certainly be something that you're going with too. The whole acceptance part of it of like, are you accepting what are undoubtedly going to be some imperfections, right? There's going to be, you're on a brand new journey. So there's going to be learning curve. There's going to be things like I said, I'm like, oh, last week I thought I knew a lot. And now this week I'm like, oh no, I'm still in business owner 101. But I feel like I've learned more than I've learned in, the last how many years. So there's part of it too, where there's that uncertainty of, if am I doing this right? And so that's a part of it, that acceptance of uncertainty, imperfection, and things you cannot control. So those three things right there fit to what you're doing. You can't control how people are going to respond to it. You can't, you have to accept that uncertainty, because that's the whole thing with fear and taking risk and taking chances and moving in a different direction. There's uncertainty with it. We're uncomfortable with that. But what does it look like if I accept it, if I can accept that? And then your own imperfections, which can be difficult too. But what does that feel like if I accept them and
Yes.
just know it's part of it?
Yeah. And then I will say, at first you're putting in all this work, whatever work you're putting in, whether you're the athlete or you're training for a movie role or you're in school or you're a new mom, whatever it is, we're all training for something. For me, it really is finding that peace and finding my center and being so committed to my health and well-being. And I think what we're speaking to too is that we're overcoming or trying to constantly overcome so much programming that we've had since childhood and in the world. And then, there's so much chaos in the world. And so our brains, our hearts, our body, the cells in our body, they're tired. And then, some of us aren't 22 anymore. And so we're tired just from the grind, and having all these big dreams and taking action. But when you step into the breathing room, there is an immediate shift, just the energy, and it smells so good. I've been lighting my breathing room candles and the incense and all of that I'm excited for everyone to check out, even if you don't live in Los Angeles, and really setting and creating that space for creativity and relaxation and focus and inspiration. But you walk into this beautiful space and then you're able to choose between 3 treatments. I would love for you to just talk about why you even chose to have the Soma Dome and the lounger and tune and what it's doing to our brains and our bodies, because it's hard to even explain as someone who's using it. But I just walk out and I'm like, oof, I feel like stuff coming to the surface. I can tell though, after doing this consistently for just a couple of months, the stuff that used to really bother me, I'm like, the people I used to be triggered by, it's just, even now there's something going on at home. This issue I'll even just share, something with some flies that are suddenly in the house, and I'm just like, this is insane. And I'm like, gosh, it's not the best, but I'm like, even just a few months ago, this would have driven you crazy. And now I'm like, but I just feel so good, like internally, that the stuff that used to bother me isn't bothering me anymore. So it's working. The work works if we do.
Yes. Yes. Oh, thank you for saying that and recognizing, like, that's part of the process too, is to even reflect on your own growth, and that you can recognize that and see that that's such an important part of it. So I'm so glad that you can just so clearly see it in these different situations and see your own transformation. So one of the big things, so when we think about the meditation and kind of what that is, and that's just kind of what we refer to it as kind of like a meditation studio, because people sort of know what that means. But really what we're about is the nervous system. So the nervous system is our system that governs everything. So it governs our physical health, our physiology, it governs our feelings, our emotions. Everything that we do kind of starts there. And most of us are struggling with a balanced nervous system. So when we break it up and just kind of in simple terms, we think about the sympathetic nervous system, which is our fight or flight state. And then we think about the parasympathetic nervous system, which is our rest, our digest system, where recovery happens, nourishment happens. And so we need both, and we need to know how to flip back and forth with both. And so you hear a lot now about the vagus nerve. And the vagus nerve is something that we want it to be active because it helps switch us back and forth. What happens is when most people are living with chronic stress or fears or just anxiety or whatever it is, we are much more in our sympathetic nervous system that we don't really want to be there. It is not a comfortable place to be, but it serves a purpose. And so we want to be able to jump into that when we need to, and then also be in our state of kind of relaxation and calm and more of our inner peace, or what we refer to as stillness. And so that really, we are only supposed to be in our sympathetic 5% of the time. The average person is in there 74% of the time. And imagine if you're going through some sort of crisis, or you're dealing with something, or you have extra stress going on. You are probably there a lot, and we have a much more difficult time than going back and forth. So it becomes where we live, and we live in this state. And so if you think about fight or flight and being in that state that we're just conditioned and used to, we wonder why we're reactive, why we are hyper vigilant, and every little thing can bother us, or we're paying attention to everything. And there's so much unpleasant experiences that kind of come in that space when you're just trying to live life, right? When you're just trying to be, and you're at this heightened state. So the idea is how do we get better management of our nervous system? If we have better management of our nervous system, we tend to have better mental and emotional and physical health. And it's one of those things that, what are we doing about it? How often do you go, oh, I think I need to manage my nervous system now? It's something that we're not talking about, or knowing, or having the tools to know how to do it. So when we think about some of the services that we have, it is helping to activate and rebalance our nervous system. So there's different methods and kind of technology that you see when you come into the breathing room. One of the things I'm really interested in is vibration, which you kind of know that. And when you start to break it down and really kind of understand it, it is fascinating. When you think about anything that is anything living, we all have a vibration. So energy has a vibration. This is not something that like, oh, vibration sounds really woo woo, or that sounds kind of like spiritual in a different place that I can't relate to. This is complete science when you think about energy and vibration.
Thank you for saying that, because so many people, they just immediately tune it out, or like, oh, that's cute for you girls, or yeah, go have your little vibration party. And it's like, this is science. This is, yes, thank
Yes,
you.
yes. And so things like sound too is at a vibration in a different frequency. And so frequency, some people, I had somebody come in yesterday, and he was an older gentleman, and I was trying to explain to him, and he was like, oh, frequency, oh, please. And kind of thought like this was something that was just a little bit too out there. And so I definitely want to bring it back where it is frequency. Every sound has a frequency. Frequency and vibration are completely connected. Our brain waves have a frequency. So when you think about something like our alpha brainwave, which is what we feel when we're relaxed and we're calm, those brainwaves move at a certain frequency. And so there are, when you start to, and I know you had one of the most amazing sound healers on, Jane Frank. It's just really fascinating when you start to understand why these things work. And so with vibration, we have completely, when you think about vibration too, and you think about meditation, ancient and universal meditation, you hear things like chanting or humming or the om, which is a vibration. And it is, when you feel it and you know that this is something universal, ancient throughout history, it is all people, it's suggestive of something that we might need. So let's pay attention to that. And then when we also add in the science with it, these are things that can have a really profound impact. So many of us are not humming, chanting, or doing the om, but what we've done is we have taken vibration and all the frequency, all the science is done for you, the technology is done for you, and it's modernized and it's optimized to help balance you and get you to that state, so that people can get to that place of stillness or balance that can be really hard to get to if they're not aware of it or doing any of these things. Breath is also incredibly powerful for working on our nervous system and all things. We can control our brain waves from our breath. We can, so there's so much that breath, and that's something that is a tool that you have with you all of the time. So this idea of conscious breathing and conscious breath, what you can start to do to feel better. It's another thing that people, it's like in one ear and out the other. Like, oh, work on your breathing.
Yeah.
And so many people are like, but what does that mean? And how? And I don't really understand. Or I did it for all of 30 seconds and it didn't really do anything for me. So I,
30 seconds, 30
yeah.
seconds. That was like, I lifted weights for 30 seconds. I don't look like Tom Brady. I'm like, okay. Or I threw a football for 30 seconds. Why am I not in the NFL? And you laugh and it sounds absurd. What is this resistance? And, you're on the forefront. We're shifting here. We're changing. I believe in this more than almost anything. It has just changed my life
Mhm,
from
mhm.
every cell. That might sound weird to people too, but I don't care. What is the resistance to this? But there's no resistance to, oh, I'm feeling rough. Or maybe they'll be like, okay, yeah, I read in my science book about my nervous system. I'm in fight or flight. I'm going to go have 10 cocktails. Totally normal.
Right.
But it's like, wow, I am really, really not feeling well. I feel like stressed out and I feel overwhelmed and all the things. When I'm feeling that way, I'm like, oh, I need to go sit my butt down and go to the breathing room. Or I'm feeling really stuck on this project. Because that's what people don't realize too. Everyone wants to make more money and achieve more and perform at a higher level. It's like literally, I want to attract the partner. I want to get out of the toxic situation. I want to not be resentful towards my mother. I want to lose weight. I want to literally everything that we want or say we want, it can improve dramatically through meditation and breath work and frequency and vibration and sound.
Yeah. And so to your point, that whole resistance is what your neuro default networks are. So when we break it down, we understand the brain part of it. When we have something like, let's just say it's a feeling that we don't want, if we suppress it, if we avoid it, the brain interprets it as a threat. So what happens? Where do we go? We go into our sympathetic nervous system. The more we avoid, resist, suppress, that is the worst thing we can do. And people believe that that's their coping skill, right? They think, I'm just not going to think about it. I'm just going to avoid it. I'm going to distract. I'm going to scroll all day, whatever it is. And they're avoiding. What you're doing is you are forming these pathways that are not going to serve you at all and take you nowhere but your sympathetic nervous system into a fight or flight, which is basically kind of like a trauma response in a way. We're traumatizing ourselves over and over again. And so if you think about, like, what I like to say is recognition is the remedy. So recognizing that when you're coming up and what you're feeling is something that don't have resistance to it. I promise you, you've already felt the spectrum of emotions. You can handle what emotion and feeling comes up. What happens is we put a narrative to it, or we are into this space so that we create a little bit more of an issue or a problem or a response and a reactivity, and we're just not knowing how to manage. But what if we didn't resist and we were able to, which you are learning and doing through meditation, where you sit with what comes up and you observe and things come up. Like you said, sometimes I leave and I can feel stuff bubbling up, and you're allowing for it to bubble up. You're not resisting it. And we perceive it as so much more because we've created those networks to interpret it as a threat, which makes it us feel like it's very uncomfortable to experiencing. But what if feelings were just meant to be felt? Like, what if it was just meant to be felt? And you let it go, and you can, the result is, and the takeaway is, a much more peaceful state, a sense of calmness and inner peace, that rather than fighting it, suppressing it, and changing our brain in ways that it's not going to serve us. And then we just have to rewire. And we can rewire. We absolutely can. So I want to make that clear that the brain, we can change our brain. But when we think about, we change our brain through repetition and practice. So when you can kind of repeat and have that practice of, like, I'm observing or I'm redirecting back to my breath, all of those things are powerful tools that can change your brain over time. So
This is such wealth, really the cornerstone of wealth, mental, emotional, physical well-being that is at our fingertips too. So, I know that you're also not like, you have to do this, but what can you share to people? I mean, you've shared so much that's making it obvious, but just a little, maybe someone who's on the fence or thinks, I don't have time, or that's cute for you, or I like my wine and you and I like our wine too. But what is that little nugget that we can do to get people just to even stick their baby toe in the frequency vibration meditation space?
Right. Yes. No, thank you for saying that, because I think that we are kind of on the cusp where people are still unsure about it. And so this idea of we haven't done a good job on the psychoeducational behind all of this. So to get out there to the masses, the true benefits of this and kind of what to expect, and to know that anyone can do it. Anyone can do it. So it's this, like, if you compare it to something like physical fitness, right? Like over time, you can improve your physical state, your fitness. You can do all that with some dedication. And so I think that's where, if people want to be feeling better or want to manage their fears or overcome some limitations or whatever it may be, they're feeling stuck in them one way, or they want the courage to make a pivot in life. What does that look like? And how do you find your authenticity and your inner peace? And so it's something that I wish we were all encouraged to do, because it just enhances quality of life. And I think so many are looking for that and they don't know where to look. And sometimes that's where you go down a path that isn't actually healthy. And that may be substances, that may be addictions, there's so many things but we do know that people deserve this and deserve to know how to connect with themselves and to find that which we all have within us. So I think it's if that intrinsic motivation comes from somebody of like, I want to feel better. If you can acknowledge that and then recognize that there are tools out there and there is ways and there is paths. And to go back to your first question of what has been one of the most rewarding things, it's the stories that people tell that are so similar to mine, like yours, how you said, these ideas just came to me and here I am, and everything just came to me through the process. We've had people come in and just kind of talk about their new inspirations. We had somebody say, I'm becoming the person I've always wanted to be. And that just laid a place in my heart. And it's there still. I carry that with, because it was so something where that connection that she's made with herself of saying, I'm becoming who I've always wanted to be, but seeing multiple people, and a staff member included, about how this has opened up new horizons and a new path for what they've always wanted to do. So I think we all deserve it and all have a purpose or a calling or something that will give us joy, and how we connect with that is really what more to life do we want?
I say things because I've been there. So I know I'm like talking about a former version of myself. And I was going to say, I think sometimes it's scary for us to step into our greatness, it's almost like, gosh, if I do this, if I commit to investing in myself, which sometimes, because it's time, it's energy, money. Sometimes, I mean, lately I'm like, man, I feel like I'm investing. So I'm feeling like poor from all the investing that I'm, doing with all the money. I'm like spending the money, but then I'm becoming so wealthy on the inside. And I trust, because of these practices, I trust that the abundance, the money I'm investing, it's going to come back times infinity. I truly, truly believe that. It may not happen in one day or 1 week or 1 month, but I can feel it coming, because it's a vibration, it's an energy. And I'm just going to own talking like this because it's science. I'm going to start using that. It's science. Thank you. But I think it's challenging for people, or scary, to even think, well, if I do all this, and then it's like, and I've always wanted to write the book, then I'm going to have to write the book, or then I'm going to have to leave my marriage because hasn't been working for years, or then I'm going to have to confront this difficult truth about myself or my life. And I just think, yes, but you'll have the tools to be able to do all that and do it with love for yourself and everyone involved. And I keep going back to, Miranda, I'm just going to think about this again and again, what you did in creating the breathing room, and then what it allowed me to create, just even this one project and then so many other things. And the relationship with myself, the best it's ever been. And it is a testament to showing up consistently. And it's a pleasure. It's my favorite thing I do every day. That's what I want people to really hold on to, because I've had moments, especially when I discovered the breathing room, you want to throw in the towel. You think, I don't want to hustle like this anymore. I'm tired, or it doesn't work out. What allowed you to just keep going and keep going on this mission, even when it was hard and even when it felt scary?
I love that you asked that, because I think it's like there's two parts to that too, where you're feeling inspired and you're like, I'm reaching for, like how we talked about, the sky's the limit and I'm seeing a new path for myself. And so there's going after those things. But I also think what's happening is that you're removing the blocks that are stopping you from receiving some of those things, which are often fear, which are often self-limitations in some way, or your limited beliefs. And so while you're going after and you're setting your aspirations and you're thinking about things that you want to go after and that feel more in line with your highest self, at the same time doing this work, what's happening is that you're removing those limitations and those blocks without even really being aware of it.
Yeah, I'm shaking it out. I'm getting the chills as you're saying it. Anna, right now, I'm just like, oh, I can't wait. I got to make time come in tomorrow, because you're talking about it. Even when you were talking about the different services, I was closing my eyes and just taking it in, because it feels so good. And, I can tend to be a little obsessive compulsive at times, or like a little bit have an addictive personality where want more and more and more. And so for me now to be able to really crave things that are so good for me, that's been such a big shift for me. And it's a shift that I want everyone to experience, and especially for you and your loved ones. So any final thought that's on your heart? I know I need to have you back, because there's so many other things I want to ask you about the brain. Anything else that you want to share with us before we head out?
Gosh, I would just say that there's this idea, or maybe a thought that for some people, like, oh, I can't do it, or I've tried before and they've felt defeated and feel like it hasn't worked for them. I feel very confident that this can work for almost everybody. I want to say everybody, because it is you're doing the work. So what's happening is that you are the one that is being your own therapist, in a sense, versus when we think about kind of feeling better or improving ourselves, it's so often a top down method of, like, you're listening to a professional, they're telling you this, or they're kind of interpreting things for you. This is more of a bottom up approach, where you are connecting with yourself, and then you are going on your journey and going on your own path to your transformation or your self-improvement or your peace or whatever it might be. And then once you learn how to do that, then who knows, right? Where we will be in 5 years, or, just sort of the new networks that we create. So everybody has it within them. They truly do. And so if you can come to a space or create a space where you feel safe, where you feel understood, you feel supported, where you know that some resistance and uncertainty is kind of part of the process. And those are what we refer to as the barriers that get in the way. It's just about overcoming the barriers, and you'll get there. And so I just encourage to, like, give this a try and lean into it, from a place that there's some real good science behind this.
Yeah. And I'm going to leave us with something you said that I've never heard, and I'm going to hold this to my heart. Recognition is the remedy. Just thank you so much. You're such a exquisite listener, and it's so fun to hear you finally talk more than me. Thank you. Thank you for your wisdom and your creation and your kindness and your heart, and for really changing my life, Miranda. I'm getting emotional. Thank you so much. And thank you for being here. And thank you for listening or watching, wherever you're watching or listening. And, keep creating. And thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time.
Thank you. Oh, thank you.